prime time in Dallas again? We'll discuss it on this episode of the Locked On Cowboys podcast.
You are Locked On Cowboys, your daily Dallas Cowboys podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Welcome back to the Locked On Cowboys podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. We'd like to thank you for making us your first listen of the day. This episode is brought to you by Prize Picks. Go to prizepicks.com/LockedOnNFL and use promo code LockedOnNFL to win $50 instantly when you play $5. Welcome back. I am your host, Marcus Mosher. You can follow me on Twitter at Marcus_Mosher. Joining me today, as always, is Landon McCool. You can follow him on Twitter at McCoolBCB. And Landon, when I was a kid, I fell in love with the Dallas Cowboys because of the one and only Deion Sanders. And actually, you probably can't see now, but I've got an autographed Deion jersey that I'll tweet out here in a second. Easily my favorite football player of all time. Loved watching him play. Is there a chance that he could be the next head coach of the Dallas Cowboys?
God, I hope not. But yes, I think there is a chance that I mean, you know, in some world that this happens. I mean, look, it's hard. It's hard not to look at the course of terrible events that have happened to the Cowboys over the season and think, hey, a couple more terrible things couldn't happen, right? There's obviously been a lot of talk on it on kind of media and obviously Michael Irvin. We should
let's fill people in. So one of the reasons that this got started is that Michael Irvin went on Colin Cowherd's show yesterday.
Yeah.
And it's noteworthy because he spent Friday night with Jerry Jones at the Jake Paul-Mike Tyson fight. And then he spent the weekend with Deion Sanders, and he goes on that show and says, hey, my sources are telling me that Deion would take the job if this, and this happened. Now, we can talk about what this, and this is in a second, but just big picture. What would be your fears about Deion being the head coach in Dallas? And then what would be the positives here?
Yeah, I mean, I think my fears with Deion is that look, my opinion on Deion Sanders as a coach is that the biggest reason that I feel like he's had whatever success that he has had at Jackson and at Colorado due to the kind of influx of talent that he's brought on board, the way he's been able to recruit players. And I think he is very much the kind of epitome of the current generation of what head coaches in college football are, right? Like these players have a lot more flexibility to go where they want and still get, you know, let's face it, the money that they're expecting, right? And so now it becomes about personality matches, about playing for someone you want to play for. And I think when that becomes a priority, Deion Sanders has a lot more to offer than some of these other coaches that are, 60-year-old guys who have nothing in common with you or your family. It's a lot easier for Deion to go into these households and sell folks on, hey, I'm going to take care of your kid. Look, I put my own kids in these programs, right? So I think that that's a great thing for a college program, but I don't know how that kind of success translates to an NFL program, right? You're not getting the opportunity to recruit. You're dealing with a completely different type of player. You're not dealing with young men. You're dealing with grown men who have families and problems and their own issues, right? Most of them at this point are all millionaires and have been for a while. And on top of that, like Deion doesn't bring like a special sort of X's and O's expertise to the table at all. Like he doesn't really have a defense that he calls his own. He doesn't call defenses. And the Cowboys issue in general, like we've talked about for years, is that in general, when you're hiring a head coach, you probably should be hiring an offensive minded coach.
I think that's the safest way to do things to have long-term success, without a doubt.
So if that's the case here, then who's Deion's offensive coordinator? Because that's really the whole thing for me, right? And so I just don't see. I think my issue with Deion Sanders is that I don't see any football upside here. I only see media, attention grabbing upside. I don't see like anything about Deion Sanders or the way he coaches or his brand of football that is actually going to help the Dallas Cowboys be a better football team next year. Now, that may change based on who he's bringing in and a bunch of other stuff. But on top of that, there are also conditions to bringing him in, which to me seem equally outrageous. So I've never really been a big believer in Deion Sanders as a kind of X's and O's football coach, a guy who drives the difference on the field. I've always viewed him as an excellent college coach who could gather the talent needed to create a good football team. But I don't know how that translates to the NFL.
I don't disagree with any of the points that you make. One of the things I will say about Deion is it feels like for maybe now more than ever, the Cowboys need a head coach or somebody in their franchise who is bigger than Jerry Jones. And maybe that'll never happen, right? I do feel like it happened, obviously, with Jimmy. And I do feel like for a few years with Parcells. Yeah, he was the Dallas Cowboys at the time, right? Like he was the guy that was answering the questions, and Jerry kind of let him do his thing. I don't know if Deion could be that, but I do think that Deion could, quote unquote, be a bigger star in Dallas than Jerry Jones. And maybe that's what the Cowboys need right now.
Or maybe that's a real problem for Jerry Jones, which is more than likely the issue, and that it ends very poorly. So I don't know, man. Like I just think that if we're going down the path of trying to hire somebody who's a bigger star than our owner in order to try to get
it's a bad process.
It's not a great process. It's not a great process, man. So yeah,
well,
I mean,
you and I were talking about this on the phone last night. Maybe again, we're just spitballing here, but maybe one of the appeals of Deion is that he's such a beloved figure in the NFL and sports that he's going to be able to recruit not players to the team, but a really good coaching staff, right? He's able to put together like an all-star staff of coaches, and he has ties to Nick Saban. He's not getting Nick Saban, but maybe he can get some disciples of Nick Saban to come in here. Maybe, again, spitballing. Maybe Brian Dable comes in here and runs the offense, who was under Nick Saban. And you put together a really good cast of coordinators to help Deion. And Deion is the quote-unquote culture guy, the
face of the franchise.
Yeah, he's the face of the franchise, right? I think that's probably the only way that this works. I'm still really skeptical that Deion's going to want to come to the NFL. Like I just don't see it, but maybe it could work that way.
I think that the real thing that we're struggling with is that, it's one of those things where it's like they're our fans are asking us, what is it going to look like when Deion, if Deion were to come coach the Cowboys? And I think the answer is we have no idea, because if he comes to be the coach of the Cowboys, like it's not like he has any sort of coaching style that we can, kind of transcribe onto the Cowboys. Like he is an entity unto himself. So I think, it's hard to determine whether this would be a good or a bad move, because I don't think the hiring of Deion himself is consequential. I think that Deion hiring whatever offensive and defensive coordinators that he might hire would be more consequential than as far as winning and losing games than anything than hiring Deion himself. So that's why I in general think that this is a media created thing, because it's like
I tend to agree.
It's not like a football driven move at all. There's dozens and dozens and dozens of other more qualified coaches on an X's and O's level. And frankly, I think that there's dozens of other coaches that are more qualified on a coaching culture level than Deion Sanders. So yeah, I think this is just kind of a, hey, Deion was a Cowboy. Wouldn't that be neat if he was the Cowboys coach one day? Like that's what this is to me.
Yeah, unfortunately, I'm afraid we're not going to get that. We're going to get the Jason Witten version of this, which I like a whole lot less.
Yeah,
but fair. It does have me interested that Michael Irvin would be so adamant that like, hey, both sides would be interested in this, And again, one of the things that Michael Irvin said is that if they draft Shedeur Sanders, Deion would come, but which is completely backwards, because you have to hire your head coach before you draft a quarterback, which is very strange, unless this was like a 2-year process where, hey, if you draft Shedeur, I'm coming in 2026. But that doesn't make sense either, because you don't have a head coach in 2025. So I don't know how all of this would work out. But it does feel like they're at least flirting right now, Jerry Jones and Deion.
This is the thing that makes it crazy. Like, look at all the investment, all the trouble that you'd have to go through to make this work. And this is all for a guy who hasn't won anything. Hasn't won anything. like not a Big 12 championship yet.
Not yet.
Not yet. But I mean, even then, what are we even talking about, man? Like, he's not going to be. They're probably not going to be in the tournament. So it's. I guess they would be in the tournament. They would have Big 12. But it's like, it's like this is a lot of hoops to jump through for someone who, on a football level, is not as qualified to be the Dallas Cowboys head coach as, like I said, literally dozens of other candidates.
So it sounds like to me you're out on this idea, just to be clear.
I mean, I think I've been yelling about this option for as long as it's been suggested.
I've been joking about it for
now.
2 years now. And
yeah. So I haven't changed my thought on it. No, absolutely not.
All right, let's talk about actual Cowboys stuff, including the future of the Dallas Cowboys offensive line. We will get to that next. This episode is brought to you by Prize Picks. Prize Picks is the best place to get real money sports action. With over 10 million members and billions of dollars in award winnings, Prize Picks has made daily fantasy sports accessible to all. You just pick more or less on at least 2 players for a shot to win up to 100 times your cash. Run your game all season long on Prize Picks. Prize Picks is the best way to get action on sports in most states, including California, Florida, Georgia, and Texas. It's the only real money daily fantasy sports platform with an injury insurance policy. So sign up today and get $50 instantly when you play $5. You don't even need to win to receive the $50 bonus. It is guaranteed. Download the Prize Picks app today. Use promo code LOCKEDONNFL to get $50 instantly after you play your first $5 lineup. Again, download the app today. Use promo code LOCKEDONNFL to get $50 instantly after you play your first $5 lineup. Prize Picks, run your game. This episode is brought to you by Zbiotics. Pre-alcohol probiotic drink by Zbiotics, the world's first genetically engineered probiotic. It was invented by PhD scientists to tackle rough mornings after drinking. Here's how it works. When you drink, alcohol gets converted into a toxic byproduct in the gut. It's this byproduct, not dehydration, that's to blame for your rough next day. Pre-alcohol produces an enzyme to break this byproduct down. Just remember to make Zbiotics your first drink of the night. Drink responsibly and you'll feel great tomorrow. Here's how you use it. Step 1, drink pre-alcohol. For best results, make pre-alcohol your first drink of the night. Step 2, drink responsibly. Pace yourself, hydrate, and get a good night's sleep. In step 3, enjoy tomorrow. Wake up feeling refreshed and ready to take on the day. Go to Zbiotics.com/LockedOnNFL to learn more and get 15% off your first order when you use LockedOnNFL at checkout. Zbiotics is backed with a 100% money-back guarantee. So if you're unsatisfied for any reason, they'll refund your money tomorrow. No questions asked. Remember to head to Zbiotics.com/LockedOnNFL and use promo code LockedOnNFL at checkout for 15% off. Welcome back to the Locked On Cowboys podcast. We are answering your Twitter questions. We only had, I think, 55 people ask us about Deion. So we have got to get to another one, Landon. But let's talk about the future of the Cowboys offensive line. First and foremost, I wanted to ask you about Tyler Guyton. We have a question. I believe it was from Goran, who wants to know, is Tyler Guyton on the right path as a rookie? Is he on schedule right now?
Yeah, I think so. I mean, I think we would have all liked to see this kind of the learning curve be flattened a little bit than what it was. I think he certainly has struggled, which is not shocking for a rookie offensive tackle. I think we kind of got spoiled a little bit by what Tyler Smith was able to pull off his rookie year. I think that was the exception to the rule and shouldn't be the expectation. I think that, and I think you probably agree with me that Tyler Guyton had maybe his best game against Houston. It's just unfortunate that the thing that's going to be remembered is that absolutely boneheaded play by him, where he did give up the sack that he gave up and fumbled the football somehow on the same play. So, but outside of that, I thought that he played a pretty decent game and looked really good, especially in pass pro. Was moving bodies in the run game, which is something that's a little bit of an addition that we haven't seen in much of from him so far this year. So I do think that he is on track. I do think he is making his way. I think the problem now is injuries. Like he's got, I mean, we just need him on the field. He needs to kind of continue to take these snaps. And unfortunately, because of whatever the shoulder or stinger situation he's dealing with, and whatever the problem was previous to this, that he's missed some time at a certain point. And I think that's good for Awesome Richards. But I think more than anything, the Cowboys need, continuity on their offensive line. They need, the snaps for these guys to play together. So it's not only not beneficial for Guyton to miss for himself, but also for the continuity of the offensive line overall.
Yeah. Since week 4, which is the game that they played against the Giants, he's allowed 3 QB hits in the last, 7 games? There was a game he missed injury. Pretty good. Now, obviously, he had the sack in this game, late in that game. But before that, he had 46 pass block snaps, and he allowed 2 pressures on those 46 snaps. So he was playing, you're right, some of the best football of his career. And again, PFF is not the Bible when it comes to offensive line grades, but his pass blocking grade the last couple of weeks has been 72, 75, 77. And that's even with the sack this week. So you're seeing him get better. You're not seeing the Cowboys give him as much help as they did earlier in the year. And I actually think you're seeing some improvement as a run blocker as well. The Cowboys had a bunch of issues in the run game last week, which we didn't even get to talk about, but you and I on our Monday preview show, we thought the Cowboys should be under center, running them a little bit more. They had 1 under center snap this entire game. I don't get it.
I don't get it either. It didn't really make much sense for the play action pass game either, really. But to kind of go back to what we're talking about, I do think that, if you go and look at Duke Merriweather, the guys that work with these guys, the thing that they're going to continuously tell you, and I think you've seen him say this, the same thing about Terrence Steele too, is that we aren't judging these guys on 1 or 2 snaps. You just can't do that at offensive line, right? And you have to kind of take the whole picture and watch him all game to see kind of what they're doing, being asked to do is incredibly difficult to win every single rep and then not have any blemishes, because the blemish is the only thing that's going to be remembered on tape, right? And then I think you brought up a really excellent point that needs to be kind of brought out here even further, is that they're not having to help him as much as they were before. Which is giving us one extra guy to kind of go out and route, which I think is a huge benefit to the offense. Unfortunately, Dak didn't get to experience the benefit of that for very long. But it will help Cooper Rush in the future when he inevitably gets into some 3rd and long situations that you may not have to chip on that left side as often as you were earlier in the season, give you one more guy to go out route to potentially catch a first down pass.
So let's answer the question of what does the future of this offensive line look like? Because pretty clear Zach Martin's not going to be back in 2025. Terrence Steele, the Cowboys could actually designate him as a June 1 cut. And I would love for you to comment on Terrence Steele. Do you keep Tyler Guyton to left tackle? Do you move Tyler Smith to left tackle and move Guyton back to right tackle? What are you doing with this offensive line moving forward?
I think you have pieces in place to kind of work around a little bit, right? If you wanted to try to do some sort of Awesome Richards, development in the offseason and then get him some opportunities, look, you still have, let's go in there. I know it's I think he's still on the roster. You still have another, I think 1 more year with him, right? If I'm not mistaken. So, maybe you see some development there. I think you probably would look at, if you're looking at to replace Steele, if that's the goal, I think you probably would need to bring in another guy, right? A draft pick or a free agent, right? I think the other thing you can try is seeing what you've got going into next season. I personally don't think that Terrence Steele has been so terrible that he's have to be replacement worthy. I do think that we can give him another opportunity with some other options in case that doesn't work out as well with some of these younger guys.
I just don't know if you want to replace the entire right side of your offensive line in one off season.
It's a lot. And again, we haven't even gotten into the guard situation yet. So the guard situation is interesting because I will point out that we are, 9 minutes into this segment on young offensive linemen in the future, and we haven't even had to mention Cooper Beebe yet. The fact that Cooper Beebe is just a foregone conclusion as yes, he's good. We like him, and we're moving forward with that. That's a really
he still has a lot of room to improve, but I'm not. Sure. There's nothing about his game that I'm like, we should be worried. Like, I think
No,
he's gonna do
or
fine.
even questioning if he's on the right trajectory,
No,
right?
no.
Having said that, I do think that Cooper is one of the guys that potentially could be the option here at right guard, right? Like, you could look at a Brock Hoffman at center, Cooper Beebe at guard, or potentially drafting a center. There are some good centers that are coming out, and the thing about drafting a center is that you can get a really, really good one in the second or third round, or
Sure.
you know what I'm
Like
saying?
you did this year.
Yeah, exactly. So I do think that that would probably be the cheapest, like, quickest talent addition way to do this. But there are lots of moving pieces, including TJ Bass, that is also part of this equation. So I think the Cowboys have options. They don't necessarily have to go out and draft a guy in order to kind of rearrange things. But if they wanted to go out and draft a guy, they would also have options on where to play him because of the flexibility they have on their offensive line.
And the last thing I'm going to say about the offensive line is, tell me who the head coach is and who the offensive coordinator is, because they might have there might be a coach that values the middle of the pocket more than the tackles. There might be a coach that you bring in that values wide zone more than gap stuff, right?
That's right.
Or man blocking stuff, and all that kind of stuff could factor in where these guys play. But I think as of right now, I think we know they have at least 3 starters for next year: Guyton, Smith, Beebe. I think you and I are in agreement. Like, give Steele one more year, draft a replacement or a developmental guy so you can move on from him in 2026 when it becomes easier to do it on the cap. But you're going to have to find a guard somewhere. Is it TJ Bass? Is it somebody that you sign? Is it somebody you draft? I think they need a long-term backup to Steele and a starting guard. We'll see how they figure out how to do that, Lane. It's going to be difficult.
Yeah, I mean, look, the one thing this team has been really good about is kind of searching for players all over. So, and they're going to definitely need to kind of use that skill to get the kind of components they need. I do think that you can be able to find what you need, but it's offensive line, so it's definitely the scarcest position that you're having to search for. So they do have a couple spots to fill, but they've also got some good in-house options, which is a benefit.
All right, let's get to some more questions, including how high could the Cowboys pick in the 2025 draft? We will get to that next. This episode is brought to you by Hillsdale College. Time is our most precious commodity, so don't waste it scrolling through the same mind-numbing content for hours and hours. How can you spend it wisely to improve yourself? Our sponsor, Hillsdale College, is offering more than 40 free, that's right, free online courses, including Constitution 101, the meaning and history of the Constitution, introduction to free market economics, the great American story, A Land of Hope, and the rise and fall of the Roman Republic. All of Hillsdale's courses are self-paced, so you can start whenever, wherever. I like to throw it on when I'm sitting in the daycare pickup line. You can just sit and listen to the lecture 15, 20 minutes, get a ton out of it. Plus, you can go deeper with readings, quizzes, and discussions, or just kick back and enjoy the lectures. Go right now to hillsdale.edu/lockedon to enroll. There's no cost and it's easy to get started. That's hillsdale.edu/lockedon to register. Hillsdale.edu/lockedon. Welcome back to the Locked On Cowboys podcast. We'd like to thank you for making us your first listen of the day. For your second listen, go check out the new Locked On NFL show. 2 shows every single day, 1 in the morning with Tyler Rowland, 1 in the afternoon with Tony Wiggins for some real NFL talk, available wherever you get your podcast. You can also check out the NFC Squad show.
Yes.
It's more like a firing squad for Layden on there, which I feel terrible for.
It's terrible.
Yeah.
No, it's awesome. You definitely check it out, but it's terrible for Cowboys fans.
Yeah, exactly. Let's get to this question from Chris. I have 2 more I want to get to. This one is, realistically, what's the best pick you could see the Dallas Cowboys getting in the 2025 draft? Now, I want to tell you, we're expected to have a big snowstorm up here starting tomorrow, and we're going to be basically shut in. So I'm going to be watching lots of draft coverage. So how high am I going to need to get a top 5? Or where do you think the Cowboys can end? Let me just start with that. Where do you think the Cowboys can end up in this draft?
So we kind of talked about this a little bit and just like kind of game theoried out a little bit. The teams that are in kind of the running with us, starting to visit the I've already forgotten the website. Tankathon. Yes,
Yeah.
already started to bookmark. I got it bookmarked. That's why I don't don't know the site off the URL off the top of my head. That's so you start to kind of look at the schedules of these teams that are playing out a little bit and where the Cowboys are. Let's talk with the Cowboys first, right? Like just looking at this schedule. If the Cowboys can't beat the Giants on Thanksgiving, there is a very good chance that they may not win another game this season, or at least one against Carolina. I mean, Carolina is basically still considered to be the worst team in football.
I have a hard time seeing them if they lose to the Giants, getting 2 more wins. Maybe they beat the Panthers and lose the rest, or maybe they lose the Panthers and win against whoever, Washington, when Washington's resting all their starters, right?
The Panthers are the only team that I still would be genuinely surprised if the Cowboys lost.
I agree.
But outside of that, like I would not be shocked if the Cowboys lost to the Giants on Thanksgiving. And the rest of the games, they're going to be, I mean, maybe touchdown underdogs for, honestly, like the way Washington and Philly have been playing lately. So you got Tampa Bay. I can't remember the rest of the games, but they're all very decent playoff teams, So, and we've, most of our NFC schedule still left to go. So I think for the Cowboys schedule, they've got a lot of losses lined up pretty good. Now, for the other teams, I think that's where things get interesting. Do you want to kind of help break down some of these other teams?
So a lot of the teams that are drafting ahead of the Cowboys right now play each other. So that's going to help kind of separate this gridlock. For example, the Raiders and Jaguars play. They're both drafting ahead of Dallas. The Titans and Jaguars play twice still. That's going to help separate those teams.
Yeah.
The Jets and Jaguars still play. I believe the Patriots and Jets still have another game. So some of these teams, I mean, there's a big group of teams between 2 and 3 wins right now. They'll start to separate a little bit. There is one knock that the Cowboys have going against them right now is their strength of schedule is so much harder, like from the season, than all those other teams that are drafting ahead of Dallas, which is not surprising. The Cowboys have had a hard schedule this year.
Yeah.
So if you get into this where it's there's 3 teams at 4 and 13, the Cowboys are going to have the lower pick of those groups. So I think there's a good chance this team finishes with 5 wins. And I think 5 wins gets you inside the top 6. I think 4 wins gets you inside the top 3.
I want Dallas Cowboys fans to stop right here in the middle of this conversation real quick and go back to where we were going into this Green Bay playoff game last year, where the two paths diverged in a yellow wood, and we took the path less traveled by, no doubt. Yeah. And now we are here talking about hoping for a potential top 5 pick.
I will also say this. We spend a lot of time hoping to get top 5 picks, right? Think about the Cowboys draft history over the last 10 years, right? You got Zach Martin at 16. You got CeeDee Lamb at 17. You got Tyler Smith at 22. You got Tyron Smith at 9. You got Des Bryant at 24.
Yeah.
I mean, like, it would be really nice to have a top 5 pick, but you don't need a top 5 pick to always get an all-pro player. Like if they end up having the 8th or 9th pick in the draft and they win on Thanksgiving, we can enjoy our apple pie, enjoy that win, right? And then still be fine in the draft. I just don't want people to freak out if they don't get a top 5 pick.
No, I think the thing is, this is the year that you want to have a top 10 pick for sure.
If you're going to suck, you might as well get rewarded for it, right?
And I will say this. I do feel like even if they don't, they're going to probably have a top 10 pick. Like I just have a hard time seeing them clawing out of that. With they got to win games, and they haven't been very good at that. So I just kind of wanted to point out like that was our window of opportunity, and that's why that game, that Green Bay Packers game, was so disappointing. Is because look at how the things have unfolded since then. So I think the Cowboys getting a top 5 pick, changing their coaching staff, like there is lots of opportunity for this team to kind of have a turnaround and be a good team next year, because they do have talent. But I think that if they are able to get into the top 5 and draft a Mason Graham from Michigan, I'm just saying that to make you all mad, honestly.
Sure.
Or seriously, a Hunter. I think that suddenly you could come back with a reinvigorated team, a new head coach, some talent that you just got at the top of this draft, and really be a team to contend with.
I just want to point out really quickly. I know I was upset at the end of the 2020 season when the Cowboys got a couple wins late in that year, and it ended up meaning that they weren't going to have a top 5 pick in the 2021 class. They were going to miss out on Jamar Chase and Penei Sewell and Kyle Pitts. They ended up having the 10th pick. They traded back 2 spots, and they might have the best defensive player in the league right now.
That's right.
Even if it doesn't work out where they don't have a top 10 pick, the Cowboys have had a pretty good history whenever they draft high. The last thing I wanted to say about this Packer game, I remember after the 2015 season how depressed I felt about the Cowboys because it felt like Tony Romo's career was over.
Yeah.
He couldn't stay healthy.
Yeah.
The Cowboys went 4-12. Jason Garrett was their head coach, which was the most depressing part of it all. And suddenly they were right back into the playoffs next year with one of the most fun teams.
Yeah.
Things change really quickly in the NFL. So like, I know it's really bad right now and it sucks. It doesn't mean it's going to be this bad at this time next year.
Yeah. I mean, again, that's why I keep also pointing out that this team has talent because, you wipe the board clean, you start over every season. And that is a true statement every year. What you want to do is try to continue to just get your young players getting better so that when you wipe the board clean, suddenly you look at this team with fresh eyes next season.
Yep.
And they have an opportunity with some new configuration to really, take it to the next level and kind of pick up where they left off from a season ago, not from this season.
Exactly. All right. That is it for today's show. We want to thank you for making Locked On Cowboys your first listen of the day. For tomorrow's show, we've got the crossover with the Locked On Commanders and David Harrison. So make sure you check out that. On Friday's show, I know David's going to be real happy.
David's already been taking shots at me on so much on the squad shows that, geez, like I don't. You need to defend us somehow because I'm riddled with bullet holes at this point.
Check out Landon on Twitter at McCoolBCB. I'm at Marcus_Mosier, and we will see you tomorrow.